So this weird little camera thing here is just to record me, do the presentation to you guys. So at the end, when you guys probably all forget it tomorrow, we can send it out to you guys again so you can rewatch it if you liked it a lot, okay? You'll get the slides as well. Same thing is going to happen for the kids with the warm-up presentation that we're going to be doing afterwards. I always film them so we can send them back out, because, I don't know, I always felt as a swimmer, every time I'd go watch a presentation or something like that, you'd go, you get some good information out of it, then you forget it, and then there was no way to kind of get it back into your brain, especially for the parents who may not have even been there. So I always send all of them out. They all go out to you guys, okay? So I try to make sure it's just me on the camera at all times, okay? Especially when I'm doing the kids as well, okay? So, all right, so guys, today I've been asked to come down and talk to you a little bit about, what we do at Formidable and why strength training itself is important for swimming, okay? So this is kind of what we're going to be talking about today, what actually matters for swimming strength training, okay? Now, that's me. That's a fairly new photo of me because I've got no hair. I had to change it recently because all my old photos had hair. So if you see any photos with some guy up there who looks a bit different, who's got a lot of hair, very unkept, just remember that is actually me, okay? I went over a bit of a transformation. So this is now me. So who I am, my name is Ryan Evenden. I'm the founder, owner, whatever title you want to give me for Formidable Strength and Conditioning. Okay, I've been a swimmer at an open national level with City of Perth and the Bunbury Swimming Club. I managed to get to about 6th in the country for the 200 breaststroke at certain points in my career, but I was always busted up with injuries. For a majority of my open career, I would go about 16 weeks, get a good bulk of training in before a short course nationals or a long course nationals, injure myself pretty much straight afterwards, rehab for a bit, and do it again. And that was my cycle. So I never really managed to get very big blocks of training in. Well, obviously it didn't really help my training. It obviously wore me down quite a bit, and I was eventually retired for injury by a sports doctor. He said, look, we can't give you any more anti-inflams, you are done on this now. So you have to kind of make a choice. And that choice was for me to leave and start doing more S&C work a bit more seriously. Okay? So for me, and I will talk about this a lot throughout the whole presentation, my number one priority for any strength and conditioning work isn't the performance side of things. It is to make sure that the swimmers stay in the water as much as possible. Okay? That is where the real performance happens, is when they can actually get swimming. Okay? So a little bit about what we've done over the years at Formidable. Okay? So over the last couple of years, or the last 10 years we've now been running. This is our 10th year now. National qualifiers, I just ended up stop counting. We got to over 100, so I thought that was good enough as a stat on the board. National medalists, we're at about 52, and we're at about 20 world records now across different disciplines, including ultramarathon swimmings to para, to pool, to open water. Okay? So it's not been a bad 10 years, and we're pretty proud of it. We also got S&C Program of the Year last year at some award in Perth. I can't remember the name of the awards. I wasn't there. I was off in a caravan doing presentations to regional clubs, so my staff managed to have a night out. What was nice for them. And our mission, as I've kind of mentioned a little bit already, is to keep swimmers swimming. Okay? For me, all that we need to do to get kids better in the water is to make sure they have enough time in the water, doing the right things consistently as they can. Okay? So for me, my job as the S&C side of things is realistically being to take care of everything outside of the water so they can perform in the water. That makes sense to everybody here. Okay? So making sure that they're, got good strong muscles, making sure that they're on top of their sleep, making sure that they've got access to someone who can give them the correct nutritional information. Just as an FYI, if anyone wanted to ask me any nutrition questions at the end of this, I will be referring you to someone else. Okay, I don't touch it. There's a reason why sports dietitians spend 8 years at university learning that stuff to make sure they can do it, and I did not. Okay, they're way smarter than me, so I'll always refer out for that kind of stuff. And just making sure they have a safe space as well outside of their pool environment where they can come to us and talk, and we can have honest conversations for them if they need it, or give them advice is another thing. Okay, so for me, we're all about creating swimmers for life. That's another little motto that we have as part of Formidable Strength and Conditioning. Is we would like to see at some point someone from our junior program become an adult swimmer. okay? So we have a swim program at BD Park as well in conjunction with City of Perth. That would be our ultimate goal, is to have one of our guys start in our bottom squad and end up as an adult swimmer. That to me is a huge success, okay? That means we've managed to foster a love for swimming for as long as a period of time. They've managed to go through every competitive aspect they can. They've left competitive swimming and still wanted to keep going, okay? And this is kind of what we're talking about here. So when we're talking about keeping swimmers swimming, these are the kind of the things that we're looking to do as part of that, okay? Number one is to reduce injuries, as we've been talking about, okay? They can't swim if they aren't in the water, okay? Create a safe and positive environment. So we like to build trust, respect and confidence. Maximise performance, obviously, because at the end of the day, we're in a competitive swimming environment. We want to get a result, and that result is normally a performance outcome, okay? Push them when they need to be pushed. I'm a big believer in driving accountability towards the swimmer whenever we possibly can. So making sure the swimmer knows what they need to be doing, educating them, giving them the opportunity to practice those skills and then develop on those, and then making sure they stay accountable for those skills. I don't think babying our athletes is a really great way to go. We need to make sure they feel safe and secure, but we also need to make sure that they are the ones accountable for their own results, okay? And then helping them drive consistency over time. Attitude over talent. I like to think that the better attitude swimmer would beat the most talented swimmer. It's obviously not the case a lot of the time. A lot of the time, talent does win. But in terms of them pursuing their goal and their individual performance, or this gold standard performance down the bottom, if we can foster good attitudes in our athletes, making them accountable, all these other things that we've just talked about, that will outperform in terms of our gold standard performance more than just a talented athlete that just turns up, okay? They're going to be more driven, more accountable, want to get results. They'll have a bigger improvement curve. Does that make sense? And then last thing, I think it's actually quite important to make it fun. At the end of the day, people like doing this because it's fun. It's pretty hard for you to convince a swimmer to train as much as they do and then do gym on top of it and do everything else if they're not enjoying themselves doing it. Okay, so creating a fun environment is also pretty important. And that all leads us to this kind of gold standard performance that we like to talk about, okay? So I know we're here to talk about a gym program, but for me, it's all about giving people as much opportunity through our gym program to achieve these gold standard performances, because nothing keeps people swimming more than them seeing progress and getting their achievements ticked off, okay? And at the end of the day, that's what we're about. We want to keep swimmers swimming, okay? So in terms of what this gold standard performance is, okay, I like to classify it as an individual achievement of a goal that requires effort. It needs to actually have challenged them. They need to have pushed themselves in some way. Sacrifice, they have to make hard choices. In the pursuit of this goal, they might have had to give up certain things to make it worthwhile. And then consistency, so repeatable efforts over time, okay? Repeatable efforts over time for me is a huge thing. We want to see people have the ability to get up and do it again and do it again and do it again in the right way. And that will lead to what we talk about with our pillars of performance. And now we're going to start talking about more of what we do at Formidable in terms of our S&C program, okay? So a big thing for me is, if you haven't noticed, the swimming part of this is key, okay? We only work with swimmers at Formidable. We actually have no other sports. There's the odd triathlete that comes into our program every now and again. So for us, my number one priority for most of these guys is to make sure they can keep swimming, is keeping them in the water as much as possible and performing in the water as often as possible, okay? To me, there's no point me putting them through a strength training program that is going to impede on their performance when they come to training, okay? We don't want them getting sore. We don't want them feeling busted up and saying that's just part of the training process. We want to give them the right amount of strength training so they can turn up to training and actually be effective, okay? Yes, they're going to get tired. Yes, they're going to develop fatigue. That's how we get better. That's how adaptations take place. However, we don't want to put them in a position where they can't have those adaptations. Okay? So for me, that is the most important thing, and that's why we structure all our programming in the gym around making sure we keep them in the water as much as possible through making sure they have enough recovery, prevent injuries, and obviously get a performance. Okay? The second pillar is very much on the strength training side of things. Is we want to make sure everything we do in the gym has a purpose. So we always train with purpose. Okay? I'm not someone who's going to give people exercises or anything like that just to fill a time allowance, if that makes sense. A lot of the time I have people come into me asking me how long the sessions will be. And a lot of the time I'll ask them, it's generally the wrong question. Okay? The session will take as long as the athlete needs to complete it to the right standard that we are looking for. If that's half an hour one day, because they've turned up to me and they're really tired, it's half an hour that day of them actually doing some strength work. We can give them other stuff after that to help facilitate recovery, so they're there for an hour of time, because obviously they get picked up and dropped off. I'm not going to just send them out into the streets of Osborne Park with after half an hour and wait out there. Okay? But for me, it's all about the purpose behind it, and the purpose behind it is to get them to the performance that they're looking for and reduce injury. Okay? So, and then on the other side of that, some sessions take an hour and a half sometimes. Okay? Because they need that recovery to make sure they are getting the power output or they're doing the right things. Or we needed just to do a little bit extra work with them to relieve a joint or something like that, so they could turn up to the pool the next day in a better condition. Does that all make sense to people? Awesome. Also, I should have mentioned at the start, if you have questions at any point, please just shout them out and ask. I'm not really a questions at the end kind of person. I'm very happy to talk about this stuff as we go through it. Okay? So if you've got questions or something I say completely goes against something that you believe, please ask me about it. Ask me about it in the moment. Okay? And then the last pillar that we focus on with all our athletes is how do we maximise their recovery? Okay? So we want to optimise recovery to maximise their results. Okay? If you didn't know this, you don't actually get better at training, you get better from what you recover from at training. Okay? So every time you go to training, you are theoretically getting worse. Okay? Create fatigue, you will drop, you will actually end up worse. But it's the adaptation process from that and the recovery from that that allows you to get better the next time. Okay? Do people understand what I'm talking about there? Okay? Something that is very important to realise and understand is that every time you go to training, if you haven't recovered from it, you just keep getting worse and worse and worse. Okay? It doesn't mean that we can't put people over a week and say, did you recover from the week or the block or anything like that? But it's something that you've really got to remember is the more times we can get better recovery practices into guys, the more likely they are to have a successful training week, reduce their injury risk, and obviously stay in the water and swim more. Okay? And for the swimmer themselves, get the goal or the outcome that they're aiming for. Okay? So that's where we base our program off, is those 3 pillars. Okay? Any questions on anything I've just said before? Because we're about to get pretty nitty-gritty into the S&C side of things. Good? Sweet. 20 minutes in. It's good. Cool. So guys, these are the 2 things that we focus on every single day in the gym. So now we're talking about the specific in-gym activities that we're doing. Reduce injury, maximise performance. Okay? There is a reason why reduce injury is placed before maximising performance. Does anyone want to have a guess why?
Can't perform with injury.
It's pretty hard to get swimming if you bust it up. And if our ultimate goal is to keep people swimming and give them as many opportunities to perform in the water as possible, if we're not focusing on mitigating as many injury risks as possible, we've probably missed the point there. Because I can guarantee you, no swimmer is going to care how much they can squat, deadlift, or bench press, to use the easy examples, if they'd missed out on nationals because they were injured. Probably not what they're in line for. Unless their goals change and they want to become a powerlifter, but then they wouldn't be seeing me anyway. Okay? I'd probably have handballed them off to a powerlifting coach. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? And the way that we structure everything with this cool little diagram that I cooked up the other day. is around that. Okay? So this is the process we use when we are making any program for any swimmer. Okay? The first thing that we're always focusing on is range of motion. Okay? Hugely important. The second bit is how do they stabilise their joints? Can they stabilise their joints? Third bit is looking to develop some force. Okay? And the last bit is getting movement specific. Okay? Now, if we would like to go back to the range of motion, I'm going to ask everyone to stand up for me. Yep, it's one of those presentations where you have to do something. Okay? Now, guys, there is one really key position, okay, that all swimming strokes need you to get into. Does anyone want to have a guess of what it is? Your arm needs to go above your head. If your arm doesn't go above your head, it's pretty hard to do freestyle, pretty hard to do backstroke, pretty hard to do butterfly, it's pretty hard to start your breaststroke off. Okay? It'll be very ineffective for your catch position in all of those strokes. Okay? So, range of motion, and we use the shoulder as the example because I can do it like that, is if you can't do this and get your arm above your head, okay, we need to work on that. Would everyone like to have a go? Let's see where the dodgy shoulders are in the room. Oh yeah, mate, you've just, it's gone.
Same as Riley.
Same as Riley from yesterday, yeah. Come here. What was your name?
Libby.
Libby. Libby, face whichever way you like. You can face that way or that way. Good. All right, just bring that arm up above your head again for me. Okay, everyone see that? Does it look like it goes directly above her head? Nah. She has managed to get it to go above her head, yeah? But in the process, she's bent her elbow out like that, and she's raised her back like that to do so. Okay? So every time Libby would be in the water having a paddle, or trying to have a paddle, let's say, for her to get herself into this position up here, she's going to have her elbow out of position, probably like that, and then she's going to be extending through her lower back. Okay? And trying to kick, pull like that. Does that look like a position that is going to be conducive to long-term swimming outcomes? Probably not. So Libby, I'm sorry that if you're like a secret 2-time gold medalist, and my entire theory is completely blown out of the water, but right now you're not getting there, okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay? So we need to be up here to get this position. And a lot of times, okay, coaches can get frustrated with their athletes, and athletes can get frustrated with the communication coming from their coaches, okay, about certain drills that they're trying to do, but they physically don't have the capacity to get there. Okay? And it's pretty hard for people to do the drills and get a high elbow catch position and all these things that we're looking to get if they physically can't get their arm above their head. Okay? They can't do it out of the water. It's going to be very hard for them to take all those complex skills of swimming and actually do it. Does that make sense to everybody? Cool. You can all sit down for about 2 seconds, then I'm going to get you back up. There's a squat challenge. There's a squat challenge involved with today. That's okay. Bye-bye. Thank you for turning up for 5 seconds. That's all right. Bye-bye. Squat challenge, and I scared the numpties off. There we go. That's all right. There's a recording. Let me just re-center my face because Libby took it off. Thank you. Does that make sense to everybody? We're in the right zone here, yeah? So with this range of motion thing, okay, there are minimal benchmarks that we have, okay, and they get used. There's rotation ones. There's internal and external rotation of the shoulder, okay? There is extension, and there's the overhead. And there's hip flexion and extension as well, but we often don't have to measure that one, okay? With these certain tests, okay, the most important one that I will bang on about all morning for you is getting 180 degrees of motion in that shoulder, okay? You can have more, that is fine. But if you don't have 180, you're in a pickle. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Made that point pretty clear. Excellent. Are we ready to move on to joint stability, or does anyone want me to talk about range of motion or specific examples? We're all good? Yes?
If a swimmer consistently loses internal rotation in their hip,
Yes.
what kind of thing would you look at there?
If they lose the internal rotation consistently?
Yeah.
They'll probably have to strengthen the internal rotator to make that stronger, because what's probably happening, if you're consistently getting it and then losing it, it's more likely going to be a strength deficit because it gets fatigued and then reverts back to the tight position. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like the way that tightness happens a lot of the time with the body is more often a fatigue and then an emergency response from your body. Does that make sense? Emergency response is a pretty drastic way to put it, but what would happen is the body will go, this muscle is constantly fatigued, okay? So it ends up locking it up a little bit to protect it because it knows it doesn't have the natural strength to support it throughout those movements all the time. So once you make it stronger and then you keep opening it up for your stretching as well, you then get that long-term progression because your body then recognises that position as safe and allows for that to open up and stay there. Does that make sense? So in terms of any kind of range of motion issue, a lot of the time we will look to release it. So create the range of motion. In the dryland warm-up, we talk about this a lot because that's a lot of what the dryland warm-up tries to do, is we look to release the area, okay, create that window where it has got the range of motion available to it, and then we put some stability actions into that to progressively get it stronger over time. And then the time window, depending on how long it has been tight for, will dictate the journey that it will have to go through to get back there. Because your body and your brain works on repeat signals and patterns. So if it's been a pattern that's engraved there for a longer time, it'll be harder for that to be erased.
It's been about 3 years.
How old?
She's 15 now.
She'll probably be okay. It won't take her 3 years to get it fixed. It's not like if you've been stuck for 3 years, it's going to take you 3 years to get back. It'll just take a little bit longer. Does that make sense? So it'll be about opening it up, creating that safe environment and going from there. Luckily, when you're younger and at the age of 15, your brain's constantly rewiring itself anyway. So that makes it a lot easier and creates a little bit less time for that to be a problem and for that intervention to work. The older you get, sadly, the more those pathways are developed and they're ingrained, and it's harder for them to change. But they still can change. It's always changing. Does that make sense? Everyone okay? It just takes a lot longer, yeah. I was going to say a naughty word on camera then, but okay. So joint stability, okay? If you hear me today referring to this as joint centration, just assume that they're the same things. But joint centration sounds a bit too S&C wanky, to be honest. And joint stability is probably going to make more sense to you guys, okay? So joint stability is you being able to stabilise the joint under force and load, okay? So it's all good you being able to get your arm above your head and hold your arm up above your head and have heaps of range up here. But as soon as you go to press or something pushes against it, it falls out of position and then you lose it all. You're not going to be able to generate any output or force. It'll also likely mean that you're going to compensate with a muscle fibre or a muscle pattern that is going to be able to do that, instead of actually doing the mechanics that is going to be optimal for your shoulder health, your knee health, all those things. Does that make sense? Okay? So, for everybody now, stand up again. He's onto it, he knows what's up. Up, down, that was some enthusiasm, I liked it. So, both arms now above your head. Now, if you can't get your arm above your head, we already know that you can't do that, but that's okay. Stretch up as high as you can, like really reach, really try and push up, okay? Now, without bending your elbows, okay, I want you to pull your shoulders down as far as you can. Does everyone already feel their lats turning on, or the sides turning on, yeah? Excellent, push them away again. Now, what I want you to do is pull that down for me. You can put one arm down if you're not that coordinated, or you can keep them both up if you want to prove a point. Bend your arm like that, go fingers down, keep the shoulder down, go elbow up, feel that lat engaging more and more, and then just pull down and feel that lat turn on and actually pull. Does that make sense to everybody? Did everyone get that? First time, excellent, good. Not really? That's okay, you had too much range as it was anyway. Does that make sense? See how that actually feels like you're engaging. Now if you put your arm up above your head like this, keep the extension and then try and do the same thing, feel what it feels like. How much lat do you feel from this start to the end? Not a lot. Okay? Now, I'm sure you guys understand this, but the lat is kind of important when it comes to your pull stroke. Being that big, long muscle connected to your spine, has a lot of potential to generate force, yeah? Your lat will not, if a muscle is at length, okay, and it stays at length, it can't shorten. Okay? For a muscle to contract, it must shorten. Okay? So if you're up here and pulling down like that, the only option it has to generate any force or get down is to pull through internal rotator. Okay? That's not a bad thing. We need your internal rotator to work. We just don't need it dictating 90% of your muscle, like the stroke mechanic, because that is not its job. Okay? Internal and external rotator's job is to internally and externally rotate the shoulder or your arm into your shoulder joint, okay? But create a stable platform for your bigger muscles to be able to actually do what they need to do, what is pull down through your pec and your lat. Does that make sense? See how this starts to cascade on each other? If we don't have the range, we're not going to be able to get our arm up above our head. If we can't centrate the joint, we're not going to be able to develop force or power through those big muscles. Okay, you can all sit down again, thank you very much. That's probably the last time you have to get up and down, just so you know. Just before more people start walking out. Okay?
Is that why you gymnastics athletes always seem to pick up swimming a lot easier than...
Because they're super strong and stable through a lot of their joints because they've been training for it forever? Probably. Where they fall down is, though, they naturally stay quite short. So that's, again, that talent versus work effort. They're probably in the wrong sporting environment for them unless they obviously grow and develop. Yeah, but exactly why everyone goes, everyone do gymnastics when you're a kid. Because gymnastics is a calisthenic sport at the end of the day. It's a training modality that you use. There's a lot of coordination factors in it. What will really help you with any sport that you're going to go into, but mainly it's going to provide you with the range of motion and stability that you're going to need for pretty much any sport. Okay? Hence why my daughter's doing gymnastics. Not that we're going to be pushing her into anything or anything like that. She actually just likes doing front flips, and I thought it might be nice for her to do them safely for once. Who knows? I don't know how to do a front flip, so...
Remember to stop before she gets injured.
Yeah, no, we'll be pulling her out. It's okay. I understand training loads. I see that all the time. It's all good. So, which here still in joint stability. So, when we're looking at joint stability, okay, the markers, the KPIs that we are working with here, okay, is the asymmetry score. Okay, so when we do our performance testing with guys, our device will pick up an asymmetry score right to left. Okay, so it will tell us exactly the difference between their right side and their left side in specific movements. Okay, it's pretty cool. I really like it, and we are working with. If they're under 5% asymmetry, we're really stoked. That's like gold. Like, no need to think about it, no need to touch it. Okay? Under 10% asymmetry score between one side and the other, we're really happy as well. Very good score normally. Over 10, we're thinking, depending on what the numbers were that they put out, because a percentage can blow out depending on how big the number is. So, for example, if their scores were 50 newtons and, say, 40 newtons, it's going to be a massive percentage, but it's 10 newtons of difference, so I'm not too worried. The score really just tells me that they just need to get stronger in general, okay? Because 50 and 40 newtons is not a lot, okay? So we're looking at those to make sure that we're balancing out the body, so we're creating stability on both sides. Does that make sense? So we're not becoming dominant on one side or the other. Reason for that is compensation's probably taking place. That side that is developing a lot of force all the time is probably going to end up in a pickle at some stage because it's doing a lot of work. There's a lot of fatigue there, okay? Or the left side's going to try and do the same things as the right side, for example, if the right side was stronger, and it's not going to have the strength and supporting mechanisms around it to be able to produce the same outcomes, and therefore that drives higher risk of injury. That all makes sense to everybody? Okay, cool. And again, we want to keep them in the water as much as possible, so having a balanced score there is quite important, okay? Another one that we are looking at is internal and external rotation ratio, okay? Now this refers to either side, so let's say your right side, the strength on your internal rotation versus your external rotation, okay? So this is balance between the front and the back of the shoulder, okay? The marker for a long time has been you want a 1 to 1.2 ratio for internal to external rotation, okay? Realistically, when I look at it, because I don't do math that well in my head, I just go, is the external stronger than the internal? Yes, we're good, okay? And we just keep progressing that up to a certain point, okay? When they get really strong, we end up going for 1-to-1s, Okay? But that's not until they're really strong and probably a bit older. Does that make sense to everybody? Everyone's okay with this so far? Cool. And then we have some isometric endurance tests that we like to do during their programming. Okay? Stuff like, can they hold a lunge for 3 minutes on each side? Can they hang off a bar for 2 minutes straight? Can they hold a push-up position for 2 minutes? Can they do a plank for 3 minutes straight? These ones. They're pretty like standard numbers that we look for, but the reason we have those numbers is it shows us that multiple joints can function together and hold position and stabilise at different points. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. Okay? They're pretty hard. Like, they're pretty hard standards, so Rose, get ready. Okay? For anyone who doesn't know, Rose didn't know what a family name was, so she put Rose down twice on her form. Just so you know. So Rose back in the back corner. Couldn't believe it. I was trying to find a name on the software to do the testing. It was by Rose. Didn't know who that was. What was that? Just so I know her first name. Yeah, it's good. She's obviously a Rose. Yeah. But anyway, back to topic. Okay. What was it? What were we talking about? Isometric testing. Okay. They give us a good example of how they can hold positions under pressure for a long extended period of time. Okay. And we have all those different tests because that covers pretty much the entirety of the body there. Okay. So we have balance across everything. Okay. Everyone good with this so far? Cool. Sweet. We've got heaps of time. Excellent time. Good. So this right here makes up the majority of our injury prevention, risk mitigation side of things. Okay? However, if you can see this bracket that goes all the way across to force development, it's not something that we just do in isolation at any one point. Okay? Hence the brackets. Okay? And as I mentioned earlier about how do we improve range of motion, a lot of times when we need to improve range of motion, we need to do a fair bit of joint stability work to make sure that that's happening. Okay? Because it needs to know that it's a safe and stable environment for the body to, over time, reprogram itself to allow it to go into that range and consistently stay there, especially under force and pressure. Okay? So that's why that is bracketed all up together. Okay? However, if someone can't get an overhead range of motion, a positive overhead range of motion, we're probably not doing any pull down work with them at that stage. Why do you think that would be? Well, not necessarily damage, but we're not going to be working the muscles we wanted to anyway. Yeah, we're reinforcing bad patterns, all of these other things. I tend not to think in terms of damage, injury, and all those scary big words, especially when we're talking to athletes around it, because that can reinforce and create some scary things later down the line. We like to think, okay, well, it's not doing the intended outcome, if that makes sense. So if we put them into this position and they can't actually get into that position, they have to compromise to get themselves into, say, a lat pull down position, okay? And they can't actually do it, we're just going to load up lower back, we're going to load up pec, internal rotator's going to go, where what we were actually aiming for was stretch, centration or stabilisation of the shoulder, pull through to lat, okay, and scap to move around, okay? That's the functional we're looking for in a pull down. If we don't have that range of motion at the start, we're not going to get most of that outcome. So it's no point doing it. Again, thinking about pillar, like what we were talking about before, we need to train with purpose. Okay? If the purpose is to improve the pattern and the strength profile of that movement, we need to make sure they can actually do that movement first. Sound good? Make sense? Great. So we'll go to force development. Okay? How to develop force. Now this is where we start thinking a bit more around the performance outcomes. Okay? We start looking at maybe power to rate ratios. Okay? Just so you know, I don't weigh athletes regularly. I think it's a really bad habit, really scary thing to do. Definitely don't do it. However, it is a good measurement to see where they are at in terms of that. So blind weighings is normally the way that we would go if we ever weigh someone. Or we'd weigh them in conjunction with doing a squat jump or something like that, because the pads will weigh them just for us anyway without them even knowing about it. Make sense? So power weight ratio is quite important. It just tells us how much stronger they are than their own body weight. Okay, pretty handy tool to know. For years and years and years and years and years and years, everyone's been talking about you need at least 1.25 times body weight to start doing your power work. Everyone kind of disagrees with that now, in case anyone's heard of that before. You should do power work at any stage because it's just an aspect of training. But 1.2 times body weight, you do see a massive difference in their ability to be athletic once they get to that stage. That's actually a strong athlete that can move their body with some real purpose. So everything starts to get really good at that stage. Yeah?
But it doesn't mean that if you are really skinny and mean that you can't generate the same power.
No, because it's based on your body weight.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. So like, it's also a much better outcome measure than trying to just say, can you squat 100 kilos? Because a person who is 100 kilos squatting 100 kilos is just lifting their body weight. Someone who is 80 kilos lifting 100 kilos is doing 1.2, and that's great. You're really stoked about that. Does that make sense? And they'll be a much stronger, more powerful athlete down at that side of things than they would be if they're up at the 100 kilo mark. Does that make sense? So not that weight for me is an indicator of performance outcome, because it's been pretty proven across it's not, okay? But it is a really good aspect for a sport like swimming to understand that the power to weight ratio is still a really important tool that we need to be looking at, because it will make a difference to how they can exert their force in space. Does that make sense to everybody? Cool. Maximal output, we obviously have that up there. A lot of the testing that we do is based on their peak force, like the testing we do in their initial is based on their peak force, because it's an easy trend to measure as we go along. Okay? That's peak force and that's exactly the same thing, so that's fine. And then we do that through generalized strength training movements. Okay? So this is where we're doing our pull down, our squat, pull up, rows, all those general strength training movements that you've probably seen a lot of people doing. Bench press, all those things. We generally don't bench press with a bar because I like the shoulders to be able to move a bit more, so we'll do that with dumbbells. Okay, RDLs, deadlifts, all those things. Those general things that are going to build strength throughout the entire body and create a really robust and strength heavy athlete. Does that all make sense to everybody? Okay. This is not the stage where we're throwing medicine balls around and doing all of that stuff, or trying to mimic swimming outcomes or anything like that. Okay. This is a general strength building phase where we need to build as much strength in key areas as possible, so we can then start to transfer that across to their outcomes in the water. Make sense? Cool. And that's where the movement specific part comes in. So this would be our specific strength training movements. Okay? Who would like to have a guess at what the most specific specific movement is for swimming? Come on, have a guess. Weights? What's the most specific movement you can do for swimming? A pull down? A hang? Yeah? Some kind of vertical pull action? Yeah. What about if you're a breaststroker? Yeah, so that threw you all out. No one thinks about the poor old breaststrokers, do they? Okay? The most specific movement that you can do to improve your swimming and to get this transfer across is actually being in the water and swimming. Okay? So it's a bit of a trick question, but it was on the board. I don't need someone swimming. Okay? So that would be your most specific one, yeah? But I don't have a pool inside my gym, and I'm not making people lift weights and then jump in the water straight off the bat. Okay? Unless it's a training thing. So what we do then is we try to create we take the specific elements of swimming and we try and apply those elements to different movements. Okay? So we have different ones: the speed of the movement, the direction of the movement, the duration of the movement, the intensity of the movement, and the rest period of the movement. They're like our 5 ones that we base this off. Does that make sense to everybody? Generally, there's no point trying to hit all 5, because then they might as well just be swimming. Okay? Like realistically, if you're doing all 5 in the gym, you probably missed the point. They probably should be in the water. Okay? Hitting 1 to 2 is pretty good. Okay? Any more than that, it starts getting a bit overcomplicated and a bit too much Instagram famous for me. Okay? So with that, we're looking at, if we're doing a pull-up, for example, it may be doing a pull-up at the same speed as you would do your pull down, pull stroke, your stroke pull. Okay? It may be having a cable machine, and this is very specific, and we don't do it a lot of the time, but actually like getting yourself in that anchor position, really focusing on that and then pulling through on a cable under light load to try and reinforce that pattern for when they get back in the water with some rotation element into it. It may be grabbing a bed ball and doing some rotational force work over a duration of time, or doing it under a short duration of time, okay? It might even be for like dive starts and stuff like that. We get you under a bar, we lock the barbell in place, and we get you to push against that barbell as hard as you can for a 5 to 10 second window in your dive start position. The barbell doesn't move, but you get the same intensity of the initial block start or a jump, okay? It may be doing a standing jump with a split stance to mimic your dive start, or doing a jump on 2 feet to mimic your turns. Does that make sense at how this starts to transfer to being specific in the water? Okay? And that happens through an extended period of time. Okay? Like it says on here, okay, normally when we first get the athlete, depending on where they sit and what they tick off the box, okay, they're probably going to start their journey around here, in this block here. If they're mildly advanced, they're going to be hanging out in here. Okay? And when they've been with us for a while, they've ticked off all the red flags and everything's all sweet, they then may hang out in just this area here. But only probably when they're just about to do their big competitions. Does that make sense? So when we're actually starting to prep for a state national event, or whatever their major goal is, okay? Shouldn't just classify it as only state and national, some people want to do other stuff, okay? Does that make sense? Yes?
Is there any differentiation between maybe students who are looking at sprint events opposed to those that are doing your own
Yeah. At this stage, no, because this is general. We need to be super general. The only thing that I'm changing here is if they're a breaststroker or not. Because breaststrokers have a completely different swimming profile than the other three strokes. Butterfly is a bit of a in the between situation because you've got 2-arm pull and it's a little bit wider. However, breaststroke, your catch position is right out here and like that, and it's a leg dominant sport and you have no rotation demands at all. Okay? Whereas backstroke and freestyle on the other end of that, it is upper body, single movement, rotational, dominant, and with leg supplementary, realistically. It doesn't really matter about the distance that they're swimming at that stage. You've still got to make sure those things are all ticked off in that general capacity. When we start getting to this stage here, that will kind of dictate what we're doing depending on if they're an open water swimmer, a 50 swimmer, 400 swimmer, medley swimmer, all of that stuff. That's where we can get a little bit more nitty gritty and specific. But I've always found, it doesn't really matter how advanced the athlete is, if we start off their gym programming with stuff that is too specific, they've generally got a lot of compensation and muscle imbalances and something going on that if we just provide them with a really strong and robust swimming specific, like generalized swimming specific program at the start, they're going to get a better athletic profile in general, what will transfer across and give us a better baseline or foundation to progress into that more specific work. Does that make sense? Did that confuse anyone anymore, or was that a bit better?
So with your,
Yeah.
like say, you know, when you like men, so you start like, they're all starting to improve that area.
Yep.
And so
If they needed to.
Yeah.
For example, a lot of the ones that come in, they've got too much range of motion.
Oh.
So that would be, we're not stretching those guys at all. We're trying to avoid stretching with those guys, but yeah.
But then, so the exercise, is it more like stretching and stuff like that initially and then it moves on to weights training? Or is it kind of...
The focus of, so realistically, they are always, every program that we have, they're going to have some variation of a hinge movement, a push movement, a pull movement, a squat, and a carry. Okay? They're going to have some variation of those 5 movement patterns. Okay? The way that we deliver them is going to be based on what they need. Does that make sense? So, for example, if someone needs more stability work, we're going to have them do much longer reps, so their tempo will be longer to develop more movement, cohesion and patterning to make sure that we can get them into better ranges of motion and moving better, versus someone who's got great mobility, great stability and just needs to get stronger. That person's probably just going to be focusing more on the weight outcome. Does that make sense? It's the way that you apply the exercises to the individual that actually matters. Because if they're all individualised, but in saying that, they're all individualised programs, but at the end of the day, if I've got two people with the same profile, I'm not just creating two brand new programs for them, because then one person by default would have got a program that's probably not as good as the other one. Does that make sense? So the way that we do our programming out is we have a load of program templates that will fit into the athletic cycle of a year for that person based on a swimmer or where they sit. And then also we can insert different parts of those programming to different stages depending on where their competition calendar is sitting. Does that make sense? And then from there, I will then go in and I'll individualise stuff based on their testing reports or what feedbacks come back to us. Okay? Because sometimes someone gets on the gym floor and we want them to do an RDL, for example. What's that? That one. It's the partial deadlift, and they just suck at it. They cannot do it. It's useless. They always blow out. It's not very good. They're not getting anything better. So we go, okay, you're going to do a hip thrust instead. It's the same hip hinge movement, just done in a different way will fit the athlete better. Okay, so we go, okay, I'd like you to do an RDL because you get upper back in that, you get your grip strength in that, and you get your hinge movement in that, so we get more out of it. However, your RDLs suck. We've been trying these for like 6 months now. We're not progressing on them. We're going to swap you for a hip thrust to develop that hip hinge movement to get that really strong, and then we'll revisit it later. Does that make sense? So we just swap it in and swap it out. Does that make sense? Yeah. So everything is it's not like I don't sit down every week and build brand new programs for 60 freaking athletes at a time, because I quite frankly don't have that much time in my life to do that. Okay? What we do though is we give them, over the last 10 years, we've built out some very successful programs that we were constantly tinkering with and adjusting and improving over time, that we then apply to these athletes, and then on a Friday or a Monday morning, I will go onto everyone's profile and make sure they're all adjusted based on what they need. Does that make sense? Or what the feedback was from the coach, from myself or the coaches the week before. Or if they had a testing result that came back and their external rotation had blown up, they had a huge increase on that, but now their internal rotation is too weak. Okay, we need to cut out the external stuff and have a bit more internal rotation there because we need balance. Does that make sense? Testing's generally every 12 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, but I put the emphasis on the athletes to, again, drive accountability down for them to rebook in for us for testing. Yeah.
How does other external sports affect?
Oh, I love this question. Yeah, because they're doing other sports, right?
Yes.
Perfect. And I would 100% recommend, I don't know what the standpoint of the club is here, but I'm going to say it anyway, do your other sports until they're at a stage where they really want to specify in that one sport. So, for example, if you've got a son and daughter, if your son came to me and did the gym program with us and was a footy player as well, for me to keep him in the water as long as possible, I have an obligation to make sure that his hips, knees and ankles are strong enough to withstand the sport of footy. Because when he goes and does footy training and hits all of those and is running and jumping and doing all of those things, and we haven't prepared him correctly, or he does his hammy or his ACL, let's hope not, but would anywhere, because I've done that. He has a major injury at footy, well, he's not going to be swimming then, is he? So for me to keep him in the water, as my goal as a swimming coach or as swimming S&C coach, I've got to take that into consideration and make sure that we're doing those things as well. So he needs to have good running mechanics, good jumping mechanics. His running mechanics should really be taken care of by him playing footy. I'm not a great running mechanics coach. Can do it, but it's not. I haven't done it for 10 years. But his ankles, knees and hips and his ability to jump and change direction definitely needs to be addressed, because otherwise we're putting him at risk of not being able to swim. Make sense? Yeah, so again, individual athlete comes to us, we profile them, what other stuff you're doing, what's going on here, excellent, we build a program for that. However, if their goal is to go to nationals, I'm going to prioritise the outcomes is for them to go to nationals rather than their social footy that they get enjoyment from. Does that make sense? So it's weighed up between the two things. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
How do you accommodate things like growth spurts?
Yeah. So puberty is a magical thing that makes my life really hard. for context, we take kids from at least 12, like youngest we have is 12, and all the way up to, I think our oldest athlete is about 65 years old. So the 12-year-olds, they come to us, they're like little baby giraffes, right? They can't move, or they're really competent movers. They get to a stage where they start to grow, their limbs start growing at weird and wonderful rates, and they all start to change and get tight in weird places that they've never tight before and all of that stuff. It's our job to make sure that we're seeing that happen through their exercises and making adjustments for that. But also, when we see a growth spurt happening, to really pull the load back down. If you think about the amount of stimulus and fatigue goes into growing at that kind of rate, and your body trying to change that quickly, because one day, I'm sure this will definitely happen to me with my kids, but I've seen it with other parents' kids. They turn up one day and they're this tall, and then 2 weeks later, they're like that tall. And you're like, where the hell did that come from? Were you wearing stilts today? Okay? They're not, they've just gone. So we need to go, it's time to really pull back. Okay? And I will normally contact the coach and say, look, growth spurts happen, load management is probably key for this person right now. That's my recommendation. Please take it on, like if you want to take it on board, this is what we are going to be doing in the gym, is dropping him right back, or her right back, to make sure that we're accommodating for that, for this period of time. And then once the growth spurt time frame is kind of stopped and they're not shooting up that quickly, we can then look to reintegrate it back in. We don't shut it down, because like they need us at that stage more than ever to kind of make sure that we're noticing the imbalances and making the program adjustments needed to kind of compensate for those different things. But you know, muscles and tendons and ligaments and bones, they don't always tend to grow at the same rate. It would make their life a lot easier if they did, or change at the same speed. So we need to be aware of that as it's happening. Yeah. So it's just about being able to see them and make those changes. Yeah. I tend to not do online programming for anyone who's still going through puberty for that reason, because I don't have the feedback quickly enough. Yeah. Anything else before I continue on? I think I've got another slide. Oh yeah, that was just me putting it into a nice little bracket that I've already talked about. There you go. Reduce injury, maximise performance. There's where those two sit, that's where those two sit. Okay? I think we've actually talked about that quite a lot just in the last little bit. And then some questions. So I think we might have answered a lot of these already. Okay? I'm going to stand over this side for a change, so I can look at this side of the room. How old can I get started? For us, like realistically, I don't really have an age on this. I've coached people as young as 6 before. We're not being very specific as a 6-year-old. We're more teaching them just like basic rolling around and squatting mechanics and just general movement, and we're trying to make it as fun as possible. But as I said, we start at 12 now for our guys. So 12 is our minimum age. That was a rule imposed on us by the gym that we are now working out of, more than my own personal preference. However, it has made my life a little bit easier, because you can imagine a bunch of 8-year-olds running around a gym is pretty hard to manage. Okay, so 12-year-olds, like, it's also pretty hard to manage, but that's okay. How many sessions do they need to do? Is another one that we get asked a lot. 2 sessions for me is probably where it's at, based on the amount of extra stuff that they're doing. 1 is just not enough. It's just not enough frequency in their week to get the results that you're probably wanting, in terms of, like, you know, at the end of the day, value for money. If you're getting an S&C team involved, you want to see improvement and results based on that and all the things that we promise. I can't tell you that my program's going to work off 1 a week, because I don't believe it will. I think 2 a week is enough. We generally don't go to 3, because that will take away from their ability to get into the water most of the time and live their life and go to school and play other sports, what we believe is really important as well. Okay? How long sessions should be, we talked about that as well. It's realistically, oh, it looks cold and rolly out there. How long sessions will be, that realistically we just aim for 45 to an hour most of the time, but if they're less than that or more than that, that's kind of where that ends up. Okay? And then, should they lift? Yes, is the short answer to that. It's just how they are doing it. Are they doing it in the... Ooh, that's a lot of cold and water. It's getting out of the way of that. It's just more of a... It's a push. It goes that way. Yeah. No, it's okay. In you get. Yeah. The should they lift question is more of a case of like, I believe they should be. It's a great way to mitigate risk and injury. However, we do a lot of body weight movement and exercises as well. Okay, so there's plenty of differences there. Yep. They don't have to be in our gym because we realise that travel is a thing. We recommend one in our gym, and if you have another gym that you're going to and they've got someone there to make sure they're not doing it stupidly, that's ideal. That's fine as well. No. So we're a coaching service at the end of the day, so we don't charge people per session or anything like that. Our fee is exactly the same if you're doing 2 sessions with us or 8 sessions with us. In terms of our gym side of things, it's more of a case of the way that we like to work is you're paying me a weekly fee to manage your athlete, manage your swimmer, and we'll give you what we think is going to be the best way to do that and make it work around your situation. So again, we've had situations before where people, like, say we've got a younger kid, they can come to us once a week, and that's great, and we can do a really good session there with them once a week. But the second session, because they don't have access to a gym, because gyms are pretty anti anyone under the age of 16, they're coming down to 14 a little bit more now, but anyone under the age of 16 going in there and doing a workout, they have a home-based workout that they can do then instead. That can be supervised by a parent that doesn't require any equipment or anything like that, or depending on if they have a home gym at home or whatever. Okay, does that make sense? So realistically, it's the same as when people go away to trips like nationals, or some of our guys, the international guys, go away to their international open water races and stuff like that. That's realistically when they need us the most to help them navigate the changes in time zones, flights, all that stuff. So even when people are away, you're still paying for us to make sure that we get the job done and you have the performance at the right time, if that makes sense. So when people go to nationals, we'll give them on the plane exercises to do, off the plane exercises to do, what they need to do in the lead up to do it, and then recovery post as well, and give them a recovery outfit to do as well, or routine. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, there's no point us spending 51 weeks with you, but on the 52nd week when you're at your competition and you need us the most, you got overly stiff on the plane because you didn't move enough, you didn't know how much water you had to do, you didn't know how to recover post heats or whatever, and you end up bombing the competition, right? Because then nothing we did actually mattered. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody?
I've got a question.
Yeah, hang on.
Okay. For the little ones, like the say 10 and under,
Yeah.
is there any kind of at-home
Yeah, I believe we do.
stretch stuff
Yeah.
that they can do just to make sure they're in?
Yes, we do. We do have a under 12s program that you can do. Generally, it requires you coming in and seeing us once or twice every couple of weeks, for us to just check in to see if the exercise is doing well, to help teach the parents how to supervise the sessions and stuff like that a little bit as well. But yeah, there is an option for that.
Is that something you might possibly be going through with the next group?
No.
Okay.
Next I'm going through their dry land warm-up, so they have a dry land warm-up they can do every single time they turn up to the pool. With only 10 minutes of time that they need to do it in. Yep.
Is there feedback loop you have with your coach to see how?
Yep. My policy is any information that I need to give to the coach, I will send to the coach. If the coach sends anything back to me, that's another question, but that's okay. I will always be looking to work on my athletes and send information that I need to send to the coaches whenever I can. Yeah. That's how I've always done it. Sometimes coaches don't get back to me. That's okay. As long as they got the information and they did something with it, I don't really mind. Okay? Yeah. It is something that we constantly work on and try and make improvements on. We understand that, for coaches, they've got more kids that they have to look after all the time. A lot of the time, some coaches are volunteers, all that stuff. So there's a lot of extra effort that goes into them spending time to have a phone conversation with me when this is my profession, if that makes sense. So we do try to create different ways and trying every year to create ways and different ways that the communication between coach and us can be more seamless, where it doesn't require meetings and stuff like that. Sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't. But yeah, I'm always going to be happy to email the coach. If I have the coach's information, I'm going to be reaching out because I want to know how they're doing in the water as well. Because that's, at the end of the day, That's what I'm based on. I can have the most amazing test results in the world, yeah? Retesting results, I could have 400% improvements over a 12-week period. I could be laughing, having the best time ever, and they absolutely suck it in the water at the moment, okay? I haven't actually done my job. Their job was to get better in the water, okay? And at some point I've got to take accountability for that as well. Make sense? Any other questions? No? Nothing? We good?
Thank you, Ryan.
I did super well there. Just quickly, guys, that's obviously the program that we were running. I'm sure you guys know that at the moment, if you guys get in, I think it's like end of this week. When was the cutoff date? Was it yesterday? Cutoff date was yesterday. I'm going to say if you get to me by the end of the week, I'll happily slot you in. We haven't actually decided how much of that fund's been dispersed yet. So, I've got a nod from El Presidente. We're all asleep. Good. So, if you want to get involved, book a call, go from there. Okay? I think my contact information is somewhere. You should have access to my email. As long as I get an email by Monday, I'm pretty happy to go through it. Okay? Are you looking at me in the camera? Nice. Any final questions, guys? Anything? Nothing? All good? Yeah. What do we do for recovery? First off, almost a presentation in itself. However, talking about the big blocks, we'll focus on making sure they've got adequate sleep. They're eating enough food. Like eating enough food is generally, like it may sound weird that swimmers don't eat enough food, but eating enough food in this day and age is the number one thing that we are banging our heads against at the moment. And then hydrating enough. So sleep, hydration, and food. I don't do the food bit. I will give you guys, if you guys come to me and say I'm eating this much, I'll go, well, are you still hungry? How are you feeling in the water? And if you're saying, oh, I'm still pretty hungry a lot of the time, I'll be telling you to eat more food. And if you say, oh, I'm pretty flat every time I come to training and I feel like I'm in a bit of a hole at the moment, I'll be like, you probably want to start eating more food. Okay? And then the sleep side of things, obviously 8 hours. We do have an entire recovery pamphlet booklet that our athletes get as well. That goes through all of that stuff as well. Other than that, we have recovery routines that we do post-competition. In the gym, we have the compression gear that they can use whenever they like. They don't have to come, they can book in a session during the session times and just turn up and use it. They don't have to have a scheduled gym session with us to be able to use that stuff. If they're in the area and they want to use it, say they're coming back from States and they want to come and use it, they're welcome to use it. Okay? Any other questions? We're here. That's me. That's all my interesting information. I'm going to have 5 seconds to get my next slide up for the kids. Or we're having a break and then going from there. I don't know what we're doing.